this is an interesting one because I wrote down that they have an input-output relationship with food. And this is sketchy territory because it can get you in trouble when you talk about it. But one of the things that I have found is that people that are thin or people that are naturally fit, they have a natural understanding of the input and then what output they need to do to match that, and vice versa. So for example, my mom taught me from a very young age, and I now teach my kids that like food is fuel. And when you eat fuel, like you want to move in an appropriate manner with that fuel, right? You want to, so like if you overeat, it's not like you obsess about it and you go hit the stair climber for X amount of time to erase that meal from your life. We're not talking bulimia or any kind of tendencies like that. We're talking having a healthy relationship with it. And I think this is where it can get kind of, confusing. As someone that like I had an eating disorder when I was a teenager, and I understood that, right? But one of the ways that my mom helped me through that was by teaching me a healthy way to understand that like food is fuel, rather than thinking, hey, like I ate something, it's bad, I need to punish myself. It's like, okay, I ate a large meal. That's acceptable. That happens, but I do need to move some more. I do need to understand the input, output, calories in, calories out. And for some reason, somewhere along the lines, it became like a little bit taboo to like talk about it like that, because it comes across as you're like, that's disordered eating. Just eat your meal and get on with your day. Yes, if that happens now and then, sure, like don't obsess over it. But most people that they do have that input output, but it happens naturally. Where like they ate more. It's almost like the FGF21 thing we were talking about. They ate more and they're like, I probably should move. I'm gonna go for a walk around the block, or I might exercise a little bit more tomorrow. Yeah, I feel like I overate by like 1,000 calories yesterday. I can just feel it. So it makes sense that I'm just gonna move a little bit more today. And it's not an unhealthy, weird relationship. They just do it. They have that input, output, and that's fine.
Wow. So they're not obsessed, but they do tend to keep a running tab of like the amount of food that they've consumed. Somehow, I guess the caloric density, like they're cognizant of whether or not they've had like maybe an excessively fatty meal the night prior.
Yep.
And they cater their activity accordingly.
Totally. And it's our, Bill Mietta, that the ripped dude on Instagram, he's like in his 60s or he's like late 50s, and he's Japanese. He lives in Hawaii. He's like sometimes lifts stuff with his mouth. You ever see that guy?
Maybe.
He's like a phenom, but he's and I interviewed him just because I found him fascinating. Because like anyone that's like pushing 60 and is shredded like that, but also just very mindful and very like, I love what he has to say. He's such a kind gentleman, like so nice. Like you should totally interview him. Like he's great. Cool. He'll come out. When I asked him like what he eats, like his diet is wholesome, but he doesn't like pay super close attention to it. And he's a very spiritual guy. And he's like, when I eat, he's like, I eat until I am like feeling a fire in my belly. He's like, and I feel this fire in my belly. He's like, and if I start to eat so much that the fire gets stifled, he's like, I stop eating. He's like, I listen to like pretty much the energetic value of his food. He's like on another level, man. Like, and I believe that this stuff exists. Like as a pretty spiritual person myself, like I believe that there's other things that come into play, like that maybe we haven't identified with science, like with how certain foods might affect us. So he's just kind of like, yeah, I've kind of identified the foods that make me feel that fire, that make me want to move. He's like, sometimes it's actually like, it's a good croissant. He's like, but a lot of times it's like rice and something that just gets me this fire in my belly and makes me want to move. And like, you can't do that unless you really know your body, right? You can't like, if you tried doing that with Doritos, like you would have fireworks going off in your brain from all the neurochemicals and all the things that are happening that you would never actually even get to feel what's happening here. So again, this like very spiritual look at it, but what I'm saying with what he's getting at there is that he understands that natural input output, right? He just at such a deeper level than we could even really describe.
Interesting. I wonder if that's you said he's Japanese.
Yep.
I wonder if that's like a cultural thing, because they say in Okinawa, they eat until they're like 80% full.
Exactly. And he's like, I don't want to butcher it because I respect him so much, but he's like, his dad or something was like 5th or 6th generation samurai. So he's like, comes from this samurai lineage where like everything obviously very spiritual, very like warrior focused. And so everything he does, like how he trains, it was so inspiring. It changed my life hanging out with him for a couple of days in Honolulu, because he's just like, even his training, and this is actually on my list too, is so we can just dovetail right into it. I was talking about like a lot of times these people are that are skinny are like, they're busy people, so their workouts are a lot of times short. A lot of times they do these short workouts, and his workouts were crazy short. When I worked out with him, it was intense and it was short, And I was actually surprised it was done already. He's like, no, this is how I train. He's like, dude, I'm almost 60. He's like, how I look like this and how I function like this is like by knowing exactly when I get to 80, 90%, you know, exactly how I get to where I need to be. He's like, and then I'm done.
Wow.
And he's like, that's how I don't get injured too. And it's just like, it sounds so simple, like people listening and just like, okay, like that's not amazing. But when you're in the presence of this guy and you see just how amazing he is at what he does, you're like, dude, there's something there. He eats until his body tells him not to, and he feels a fire. And then he goes and he uses that fire until the fire is gone. And then it's done. And then he repeats. It's crazy.
So cool. And he also lives in sun-drenched Hawaii.
Dude, right?
Have you seen that?
That's another one on the list, by the way. But
really?
Yeah.
Did you see that study a couple months ago? It found that high dose vitamin D, it was a mouse study, but it found that vitamin D seems to divert energy excess to building muscle as opposed to the storage of fat.
No shit. I did not see that.
Yeah. So I've given you two things for future Thomas DeLauer YouTube videos. You've got the calcium, and then, so this was a mouse study. It found that high dose vitamin D boosted...
I'm literally writing this down.
Yeah, boosted leptin sensitivity, suppressed myostatin, which you've talked about myostatin. Myostatin is like this like limiting... It limits how much you can accrue muscle, and it increased resting energy expenditure. And for people that want to look it up, the PMID nerds in the audience... I guess it's also worth noting that, well, according to the PubMed link, it has not yet been peer-reviewed by a journal, but it is set for publication in, what is this freaking title? Sometimes it's so hard, or the journal. It's I don't know the abbreviation, but it's the first author is Jeffrey Roizen, and the study is high dose dietary vitamin D allocates surplus calories to muscle growth instead of fat via modulation of myostatin and leptin signaling. So it's pretty dope. So maybe that's a mechanism by which, like, everybody's had that experience of going on vacation and just like eating, like they're going to the grave. But then surprisingly they end up, they go back home and they find that the scale hasn't actually gone up.
Man, that is badass. Yeah, no, I have been recently I've always loved the sun, but I have just, over the last like 6 months, I don't want to say unhealthily obsessed, but I'm like obsessed with the sun. Like I'm just like going down like that rabbit hole so much, where it's just like so much of it is inexplainable too. And some of which is explainable. Like some of which is just like, it is such an energy currency for our body. Like and it makes so much sense. And obviously it's just come as something that's so obvious because it's the sun that maybe we haven't like reverse engineered why it's so crazy. But you've got guys like Jack Cruz that, he's got a little bit of an attitude sometimes, but he's like
definitely a dick.
But
smart.
But the stuff is like, okay, well maybe some other people need to start looking at what he's doing and kind of going their own directions with it, which I think we're starting to see. But anyway, the sun, also just vasodilation, also all these just things that happen with it would make sense for nutrient partitioning and proper utilization.
Yeah. So cool. So maybe that's another mechanism by which Medea seems to be thriving. And like 3/4 of the U.S. population or global population is low in vitamin D, which might play a role in the skyrocketing rates of obesity that we're seeing now in adults and children. Hey, if you like that video, you need to check out this one here, and I'll see you there.